The words hit like a storm tearing through silence. A boardroom filled with polished shoes, expensive watches, and ruthless ambition suddenly melted into nothing when a trembling child stood at the door clutching a torn school bag and blinking back tears. The CEO, Arman Khan, a man known for his iron decisions and cold eyes, felt the floor beneath him shift. He had built empires, crushed competition, and signed deals worth more than the dreams of 1,000 families, but at that moment, the only thing he could think was that there was a frightened little girl begging for help no one else could give. Backhand index pointing right. If you believe kindness and second chances can change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. For a moment, nobody moved. The executive stared, unsure whether this interruption was real or some strange test of humanity. The girl's name was Hania, barely 6 years old, with hair tied unevenly and eyes that carried the weight of nights spent worrying. She wasn't supposed to be there. Security had tried stopping her until she whispered her request with such desperation that even the guards softened. "Mom isn't waking up." The words echoed in Arman's mind again and again. Something about the raw pain in her voice ripped open a part of him he had sealed long ago. Without another word, he stood up, the first time in the company's history that a board meeting ended without his decision. He didn't care. He walked toward the girl, took her hand gently, and told his assistant to cancel everything. Outside, the world continued moving fast, cars, business deals, phones ringing, but inside Arman's chest, something had stopped. Years ago, when he was a boy, he had watched his own mother collapse while he cried helplessly, waiting for someone to help. No one came. No one cared. And that memory had become buried beneath layers of success. Now, it returned like a forgotten wound. As he guided Hania toward his car, she explained in broken words that her mother worked in the cafeteria of the same building, invisible to everyone, wiping tables after executives ate, quietly serving tea no one appreciated. She was a single mother, living in a small rented room behind the market. Last night, she had complained of dizziness, but she had gone to work anyway because she couldn't afford to miss a day. Hania tried to wake her before school, but her mother's eyes wouldn't open. So she walked alone to the only person she thought might help, the man whose photo she had seen on the company walls, the CEO. The streets blurred past the window as Arman drove himself instead of letting his driver take the wheel. Every turn tightened his heart. He didn't know what he would find, but fear sat heavy beside him. When they reached the narrow alley where Hania lived, he saw rusted gates, peeling paint, and children playing barefoot near a broken drain. It hurt to think that his own company, the empire he was proud of, stood tall while people like Hania's mother lived so close to collapse. Inside the room, the air smelled of damp walls and unfinished prayers. Her mother, Saima, lay still on a thin mattress, her breathing uneven, her face pale. It was the kind of struggle no one sees, the quiet suffering of someone who gives everything without receiving anything back. Arman's chest tightened. He knelt beside her, feeling her pulse with shaking fingers, and called the ambulance. As they waited, Hania clung to his coat, whispering, "Please don't let her go, please." Her voice cracked with a fear too big for a child. Arman hugged her gently, his eyes burning with tears he didn't show. At the hospital, time moved like slow dripping water. Doctors rushed, nurses called codes, and machines beeped in the background, while Hania sat silently with a stuffed toy she carried everywhere, the only gift her mother had ever saved enough to buy. Hours later, the doctor approached and said that Saima had suffered a severe stroke caused by stress and fatigue. She was alive, but recovery would depend on care, rest, and treatment, things she had never been able to afford. Hania looked at Arman, asking with her eyes what her voice couldn't say. That night, Arman felt a shift inside his soul. He had spent his life building heights so high he forgot the people who held those heights up. Saima wasn't just a worker, she was a mother fighting life alone. He sat beside her bed, watching the slow rise and fall of her breathing, and wondered what worth success had if it couldn't save someone from breaking. In the following weeks, he took responsibility for Sima's treatment, moved her to a private facility, and arranged for full medical support. He visited often, sometimes late at night after his meetings. The board members didn't understand why the CEO of a multinational company was investing his time in one cafeteria worker. But for the first time, Armin didn't care about their opinions. Each day, he learned more about her life, the long shifts, the skipped meals, the dreams she had buried to raise her daughter. Meanwhile, Hania's presence slowly filled the empty corners of his heart. She began waiting for him in the hospital garden, showing him her homework, telling him stories of school, and smiling in a way that made the darkness fade. She had the same spark his mother once had, the ability to turn pain into strength. Armin found himself laughing again, something he hadn't done genuinely in years. Weeks later, when Sima finally opened her eyes fully, the first thing she saw was Armin sitting beside her, holding her medical reports with a look of hope. She tried to speak, but tears came first. She had never expected help, especially from someone like him. Armin told her she didn't need to return to work until she recovered and that his company would fully support her treatment. He also arranged a better home for them, somewhere safe, clean, and close to a school. People whispered that he had softened, that he was no longer the ruthless CEO he used to be. But Armin felt stronger than ever, because this wasn't weakness, it was finally seeing the world beyond numbers. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Your support encourages more real stories of kindness, humanity, and second chances. Before the story ends, Armin stood in the hospital garden holding Hania's hand as she showed him a drawing she made, herself standing between her mom and a tall man with a suit, all smiling under a bright sun. Under it, she had written in shaky handwriting, "Thank you for saving my world." Speech balloon comment, "What did this story teach you about kindness?" As the sun dipped behind the hospital walls, Armin finally understood that the greatest success wasn't building a company, it was choosing compassion when no one is watching. Sometimes, fate brings a small, trembling voice into a room full of power just to remind the strongest heart what it was meant to do. And in helping a little girl save her mother, Armin found the second chance he never knew he was looking for.